So we begin with the book of Genesis chapter 1. This is a platform where small businesses will learn how to steer their businesses in the right way, steering them through the purposes of God. And as I'm saying this, I feel the presence of God so strong. So I'm just going to put this out there and then we're going to walk through it together. So starting from Genesis chapter 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Initially, as a startup, you might be without void. It may be dark. In fact, it will be dark, but it's dark over the face of the deep, meaning that your ideas and concepts are deep. They have meaning, they have a purpose, why God put them in your spirit. As the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, meaning that God is over the very thing that you're doing as a business. It doesn't matter how much capital you have. The fact that there is a seed means that there is potency. Once it is planted, it is going to grow. Which leads us to verse 3. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light was good. So with God involved, He brings in the light, He reveals. God's presence in your business reveals the hidden. It reveals what is existent already. What exists is existential. It is not just a concept. Though even the concept itself has life and meaning, it should make you take it more seriously, owning the work that you're doing into the startup of the conceptualizing. Then you're going to see what it really is for its fullness and magnitude. And God saw that the light was good. Light removes darkness from the darkness. Notice there has to be a yin-yang, good and the bad, an appreciation of the dark. You will not always be rid of the dark or even always have things clear. There'll always be a messy patch or messy patches of the unknown, confusion, even disturbances and hiccups, problems in the law. There will be problems in marketing. There will be problems with the competitors. There will be sabotage. There will be underhand deals to take you out. But God separated light from the darkness. It doesn't mean that darkness was necessarily a bad thing. The whole world was covered in darkness. The earth was without form and darkness reigned. And the light came to separate the darkness and the light. The light came to function alongside the darkness, because we're not going to totally be rid of dark areas, but they help us to appreciate the light more. And God made the expanse. He made an expanse. Before that, God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. No, you don't have partial light and then full darkness, right? It's fully light and then fully dark. So appreciate the light and appreciate what's going on in those dark moments. Appreciate what is working. Even in the dark times, there's still the light of the moon. And you cannot wait for light when it is dark, because joy comes in the morning. You wait for dawn expectantly. But even as it is in the dark, there is still a light. There's a silhouette. There's something you can work with, which is the moonlight. But sometimes it's completely dark. What's going in those dark moments can make you reflect. It can make you even reinvent yourself. And of course, after a long night comes the morning. After a period of mourning comes the joy. So we are going to look forward to the days of gladness and enjoy fully what is working and reveling in it. And you've got some things that are working, so appreciate them, because the darkness might actually help you move to the stage of light. Because then darkness have to coexist. You still have to deliver, even in the time of the dark. In the dark times where you will never totally get rid of the dark. And there was evening and there was morning, the first day. And God said that there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. So even water needed to be separated. So you need to separate between the levels of water. There's what is the ocean and there's water in the air. Air is still water. It's just vaporized water. We know that there is ice too, and ice is another state of water. So even a new business, there'll be a different state or different states of the same thing. Do not conclude that it's all the same thing. Separate the issues from each other. If as an employee is acting up, he is acting up. It doesn't have anything to do with the business. Sometimes they have their own issues at home. Sometimes there's competition in the business as well. A business has an environment. It has nothing to do with the systems within the business itself. You have the macro environment, and that's what is, like the laws that govern a place, the policies, the politics of that government, and you're operating in these laws. It doesn't mean that you have to project it on your family. Your family has nothing to do with the laws. They didn't create the laws, and you don't act it out on them. The same way these are obvious examples, of course, but there are some that will not be very obvious. Some will not be very obvious, but it needs to be separated. Areas of the same thing. It may look like the same thing, but it's not, because you're going to operate in a system, a subsystem, and a suprasystem. Systems, you need to know where to categorize what in and what lies beneath the other. The ice does not float on air, but it does float on water. You need to know what to give priority to, and just because a lake is frozen over doesn't mean that there is no water beneath the ice. Maybe you just need to dig through the ice. Maybe you just need to dig for water, like boreholes are dug through the earth, through the mud for water. Maybe you just need to excavate to get to the minefield, to get to your goals, just like coal or something else needs a bit of digging. You will discover more, and sometimes you need to dig more than once. You will discover more beneath something more valuable. And it was so. So God separated the waters from the waters, and God made the expanse and separated the waters. In fact, you need to know the expanses. These are the systems, these are the areas of systems that govern your business. And he separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. This is what we've been talking about, separating. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning. So from the first 2 days, we have learned a couple of principles that we can carry on to our businesses. Number one, you learned that you need to avoid avoid exists, and it's a state of the unmanaged, the ungoverned, the unharnessed, the undisciplined, the unstructured. It's got to be there, but it doesn't mean that it cannot be structured or governed or harnessed. It's an energy that is yet to be commercialized, but you have something you just need to be tamed, to tame it. It just needs to be tamed. It just needs to be changed or tweaked a bit. It just needs to be put together. It just needs to be aligned. And even sometimes you're the one that needs to be put together and aligned, because as a founder member or a member of a team of founders, you probably need to realize that you are the business and you are the sum total of anything that is going to happen to your business. Sometimes we're the ones as a human being that need to be tamed and structured and disciplined. And then it will flow on to the business. The business will be aligned. And then all this, you also need to learn that God cares, and he steps in and he commanded light with his mouth, or he voiced it. But you can also command the light with your mouth too. You can command things to shift. It's the power of the tongue, and the authority of a child of God comes from the mouth. Things can be spoken to be, but usually it means you need to get to work. It takes time, it takes work to get some light, and actually there is light. So we've learned that there is something that you can celebrate. What works, you celebrate. It doesn't completely keep the problems out, but it is worth looking forward to and maximizing. And then, as much as there is night, there is day. And then you separate the elements, you separate components, you separate and specialize. The separation of the waters, separation between levels means separation between strengths and weaknesses. Support between your strengths and weaknesses, between your opportunities and threats. separate issues and dig deeper so we can find what really exists beneath the surface. Stay tuned for the next audio. So we just went through day 2 of the creation story. I'm in Genesis chapter 1, starting from verse 9. And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear," meaning that it was there before, and it says it was good. You see, now this refers to order, the same way that God gathered together the waters under the heavens into one place. Our businesses need to be ordered. You need to categorize, just like we said earlier. As we separation is a more larger or supra level, but we need to get details or organization in order, ordering, bringing things together. You bring the likes together, just like there are super orderly people, and we call them the super neat people. To be honest, in any business you're going to run, if you're going to run it, you have to be super neat, because automation means you have to be neat first. At times you want a lot of automation, but this automation only comes from being orderly, and processes have to be in existence and they have to work before we automate or make efficiency a goal. And we're going to be efficient without, we're not going to be efficient without order, right? So in order to get there, elements need to be gathered so that you have a clear and peaceful time. That could be your business plan, it could be your strategy, it could be your strategic planning. It is necessary. So God puts together the waters under the heavens into one place, and he said, "Let the dry land appear." If you think through this, imagine this as it unfolds. The waters have come together, but now you need something to fill the space where these waters had been. And God is saying, there's no room for vacuum. You got to have everything in order. You have to have each thing in its own place. And once a void is created, it is going to make room for error. And that ambiguity could cost you a lot. So as much as it is in your control, whatever is in your control to shape, to mold, to align, to enforce, then you do it. You do it. Continues to say, "And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good." One of the biggest effects of orderly organizing and aligning, all those words you want to put together just to mean efficiency, all the processes that go into it. When you look back, you stand amazed, literally, because you're like, wow, this works. And some of these systems, even the old ones, didn't just happen. Somebody had to think about forming a line. You know, it's not obvious that one person should stand behind another. Somebody thought of a conveyor belt, an assembly line. And all of that is from putting things in order. It goes on to say, "And God said," in verse 11, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit, trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." You cannot get to creativity before we have dealt with order and discipline. The discipline means things at the right place at the right time. Getting things moving allows us to be creative. Someone said you cannot be dynamic before you're disciplined. It's the discipline first that leads to creativity. It's a discipline of having quiet time with God that leads to him giving you ideas and spiritual insight. So now God gets creative because he separated things. Of course, he has created order first. He has brought things to light. He has brought forth whatever is dry, put the waters in one place, and it's like a primed canvas, really waiting for painting, for the paintwork to go on. So he starts to mix the colors, and now we're starting to see a landscape being painted. Here it's emerging into something beautiful. Nobody really appreciates a plain canvas, even as much as how much work has gone into it, into mounting it, the work that has gone into preparing it, priming it. It has been cleaned, but we can't stop at that. So it starts to be dynamic. The dynamic is from the ordered, and he says, let's add vegetation. Plants yielding seed. Remember, all this is in the mind of God, but He speaks it. So whatever you have in your mind has got to be spoken out. It's going to be spoken. You're going to share to the board, tell it to your employees, have a plan of action, speak it out. It's not enough on its own on paper, like the plan of action. Meetings are important because you've got to voice God said. You've got to say, don't assume the employees are going to read a manual, talk about it, talk about what changes you want to see. Let it be voiced. God said, even God Himself had to say. He didn't just say, I'm God and you guys can figure out what I'm thinking. It's not like you're just going to figure out God's mind, just like that. The same way some CEOs and founders, I found out, sometimes imagine that people know what they're thinking. No, we don't know. People don't know what you're thinking, and you have to voice it. So God said, and these are orders, these are commands, as long as and as far as it says, even as much as it says God said, it is the word. And the kingdom of light, God's kingdom, this is all entirely God's kingdom. This is God. What He says is law. So it has got to happen. So even for you, what you say, even though there's a back and forth, please, it's got to happen. If it's the right thing, if it's what you're convinced and convicted that it should happen, you call the shots. You call the shots as a founder. You call the shots. You get to say, because you're the one that has the vision, do not drop the ball by not speaking into the vision and expect execution. Expect nothing less than execution according to your specifications as a founder. Are so important. Founder managers are so important because you carry the vision. The sum total of the business is you. You are the sum total. It says it's sprout vegetation. Sprout, I said it's sprout vegetation. It is not the same as carrying into your business a whole grown tree and planting it. Sprout means it's a small beginning. Its sprout is a small beginning. It's not the full garden yet, so don't expect mega things at the beginning. You can start somewhere. Don't expect miracles when you don't have the capacity. This is a beginning. Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit. Now don't get me wrong, there are miracles that can take place. But for now, He said He expected a sprouting. And this is so critical because sometimes we sprout, we want things to sprout. We're not even sure that they are going to yield anything. Count the yield first. Count the yield first. Before you want anything to be sprouted, you know what is going to sprout. You know what it's going to look like when it's full grown. That means when I go to the nursery to buy a tree, I know I want to have avocados. So I'm going to look for an avocado tree or seedling. You got to know the fruit in advance and you have to picture it. You have to have felt it, almost dreamed it, tasted it even. You know what you want, so you sprout in the same likeness of it bearing fruit in which is a seed. So if I'm going to look for a seedling, I know that this is a seedling for lettuce because I want lettuce. I know what lettuce looks like, but I'm not going to get lettuce from the nursery. I'll go and get a seedling. And I know the seed that I want too. If it is a garden, I know the fruits that have to have certain seed. Even an avocado has an avocado seed in it that I can plant. You gotta know what you want. Even the number of it. There has to be a full picture of what to expect at the end. And that expectation has to generate continuous growth and regeneration. That means if I get this fruit tree to grow, I'll get the fruit and I'll get the seed that I can always plant and sprout all over again. So it is a continuous cycle of growth, cycle upon cycle of growth. And that is what we call scaling. For you to scale, we have to have sprouted the correct tree or seedling to give you the right tree, to yield the right seed, to yield or give fruit, to bear the right fruit. and to give you the correct seed. So now they see that you're looking for another fruit that you want to see. We need to see what you're looking for from what you're planting. Now notice most fruits should be edible, and the seeds, of course, should be edible. What God was looking for, you'll see later on, was to feed his creation, the animals, even man and his wife. In other words, he cannot be looking for wasteful or wasted crop or seedling. Seedling should be those that give you something of sustenance or beauty. But in business, really, you just need survival at the beginning to survive so that your fruit has got to feed the bottom line. It has to feed the profit. Don't be wasteful with time, with ideas that don't feed you. They have got to feed you. P&L or your income statement has to end up with money. So that's what you're looking for. It's money, right? That is your fruit. That's your seed. You need to plow back that money to achieve even greater results. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds. So again, remember the commander's intent. You're the commander. Everybody must execute according to your intention. And this is the seed according to its own kind. What was intended is what will happen. What was intended is what happened. But you have to steer the process because it won't just happen. So do you have a team that can execute, that can implement, that can bring results according to the intent? Can you get your results in line with your intent? So the earth brought vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds. Like we said, according to their own kind just means you cannot plant anything different from what you expect to get. And what you expect to get is exactly what you plant. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. So the third day has a lot. It's power-packed. So we're going to leave it at that. Stay tuned for the next audio. Hello, so we just covered the third day, moving on to verse 14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night." Now this might look like repetition, but how many of you know sometimes you need to repeat yourself and do things over and over again? But in this case, let there be light indicates there had been a separation already between the heavens and the earth. That would be earlier in verse 6. It says, God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning and the second day. So now there are lights that needed to be put up in the heavens, so that let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate day from night. Okay, the lights here are to separate day from night. And let them be for signs and for seasons, for days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. So this is so amazing, because you'll be like, I thought there was light already. So that tells you that the daylight is separate from this light. In other words, this creation of lights, was for them to reflect a greater light. So there is an ultimate light, and then these were lights that were going to signify between day and night, and they were going to be borrowing from a greater light, which is a general daylight. And I know that sounds crazy, because we think that the sun is the one that gives us light, but clearly this indicates there was light before that, right? And there was light in a general sense before there were these objects that reflected or indicated the daytime from the nighttime. So these were going to signify between day and night, and then for signs and for seasons, for days and years, they would be the indicators. So we need indicator lights. You need the main lights and the indicator lights too. And it was so, and God made two great lights. You can already tell where this is going. The greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. So what we now know is the stars as we know them, and we know the sun, we know the moon, but this was their function. It was as a sign that it's daytime. It was to separate between seasons, between days, between day and night, between days and years. It would be a sign, the full moon, the half moon, the crescent. It would be signs for seasons and for days, for years. Now you need your own operational light board. Not in the car or in a vehicle, there's a dashboard. That dashboard has lights indicating the fuel. It indicates speed. When you're running low on fuel, it indicates a high level. There's a high level light, and it indicates you're running low, or emergency lights even. You need a dashboard. You need a dashboard in your businesses that are indicators. And so this is what God said. Let the expanse of the heavens separate day from night. Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs, for seasons, for days and years. And other than the lights already in the expanse for heavens, to give light upon the earth, this is also like your calendar. Plan. You need indicators of when you plan, when your plan is working. And there has to be a sign as with something that gives you a signal. Even in a factory, there are lights for machinery that indicates the levels, that the components, there is a low level or there is a high level, there's an adequate temperature, there is a high level of temperature, and there's a warning sign. So you need to create your own business, green, yellow, orange, and red light, and all this is drawn from a larger light, which is probably your strategic plan or probably your goals or your budget. There has to be something that indicates a reflection of your larger documentation or organizational plan. So there was a light to show the day, to give light. So God made the two lights, the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. So God said, set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night. Sorry about the repetition. So even the lights are designated to places and times and seasons, and to rule the night. And the stars are designated to certain times. So God set them in the expanse of the heavens, again, to rule over the day and over the night. So these are seasons or indicators of seasons and times. And these are the seasons and times of your business. There has to be something that tells you you're on track. So God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. So overall, we've talked about indication of the season that you're in. Sometimes we fail to recognize it, and you need to indicate your night, and you need to indicate your daytime. See you in the next audio. That's it for now. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. So in chapter 1 verse 20, God commanded that the waters swarm. A swarm is at least like 100, could be 50, but it definitely is a large number, which portrays and alludes to God's mentality for multiplication and expansiveness or abundance. Now, God is not a God of small time. You can start small, but you better have a big vision. So you notice that terminology here is the expanse of the heavens. It is a vastness. And for a vast heaven, there are swarms of living creatures and birds to fly in about the earth across the spans of the heavens. And after the creation of the heavens and the earth and the separation of the day and the night, on the lights that indicate day and night, now there is a ecosystem or an ecosystem that can allow the living beings to survive. Now you may argue that water is alive, but I mean like creatures to survive. There had to be a healthy ecosystem through water, through temperatures, through light, through dark, through heat, that affects temperature and affects habitation in order for the living creatures to thrive in their swarms. So the vastness of it is not enough. It is also the conditions that are met to ensure there is an incubation and allowing of life to thrive. So if you have a toxic environment in your office and a toxic culture or a toxic and corrupt way of doing things, if your systems are not customer friendly, you're going to find that you cannot sustain life. There is the first of all, the infrastructure that you need to lay, which is almost unseen in nature. You don't quite see air. You can't touch light, but those are the things that allow the fish and the creatures to survive. And then once you have the system surrounding the survival of that creature here, by creature I mean your workers and your customers, your stakeholders. If you don't have a customer base, then you don't need employees. If you don't need employees, then you don't need an advisory board. You don't need management. So your shareholders are like number 3 or your number 2. You don't need management if you don't have a customer. So there has to be a system that allows people to thrive at work, people to enjoy your products, people to enjoy your services. You have to service healthy, happy, so and joyfully. So then God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm. Notice in which the waters swarm, meaning that there is an abundance. So God creates these great sea creatures, living creatures that move. That means that the waters were filled with them. In other words, there were plenty of them. So the waters with which the waters swam, the creatures were created with which the waters swarm. So even the waters themselves were like a holding or an incubator to sustain swarms of living creatures. So plenty. Not like we see now. When you go to the ocean, you barely can see anything unless you are on a very vibrant, as well as preserved area, which is almost virgin, or there has been a very deliberate effort to conserve and to restore. But God, created swarms of sea creatures and had birds of every kind according to their kind, every winged bird according to its kind, and that is a variety and diversity. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." Here we go again, be fruitful and multiply. But notice that even from the creation, there was already a vastness in number. But then there is also a command, the fruitful and multiply. In other words, from the word go, as you lay your groundwork, you must lay the foundation for a very, very tall and robust building. You have to set your sights into the future for expansion, for vastness, for beauty, but also for multiplication, for fruitfulness. He said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the sea," not fill the water. And this is, you got to think about, how does your product end up in every home? Possibly, if possible, every possible home, every possible mind, every mind thinking about your services, how to get yourself to be the most obvious option. You know how we say Google instead of search? What do you think of what do you think of when you think of a cold drink? You ask for a Coke. And yet it is a soft drink, but we don't think soft drink, we think Coke. You gotta think about how to be fruitful and multiply from the beginning, later build ground. Work for it. And then he says, "Fill the waters in the seas and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the 5th day. So here we are already thinking big. You do start small, but you think big. In verse 24, it goes on to say, God said, "Let the earth bring forth, living creatures according to the kind." So we talked about the sea and the sky. Now this is the earth bringing forth living creatures according to their kind. livestock and creeping things, beasts of the earth, according to their kinds. And it was so, and God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds. Now notice that you have to create traction for your product. You have to prospect, you have to have a pipeline. You have to create the product itself. These creatures are not just going to show up. When God said, let the earth bring forth the creatures, they actually came out of something. They did not show up whole. They came out of something. There were components. They came out of matter. There were things to it. There's some sort of substance. They were made up of something. It may have been become so instant because He is God, but it may have been so, like a blink of an eye. But these living creatures have components, just like human beings have muscle and tissue. We have cells, you have molecules. So you have to come up with the elements that are going to become a creature, that are going to create living numbers, sales numbers, client numbers, stock numbers. I mean, what is that is going to draw people towards your business? I mean, stock is not supposed to be an issue if there are sales. It's the sales that drive your business. And for you to create a sale, that's a person who has purchased. So you need to know, where do you get the person, where do you get the people, and what are the components that make up these people. In other words, you've got to define your persona. You have to create your client. How does he think? You have to mold your customer. And you've had companies that say, we sell to Mark. Mark or Mary is a middle-aged 35-year-old who lives in an urban area in a 2 or 3 bedroom house, does her shopping in a mall, spends about $3,000 a month, takes care of 1 or 2 children. You got to profile them. Works at a multinational or works at her own business consulting. So she's she's a specialized skill person, and she's thinking of a certain convenience. Maybe she needs laundry delivered. Maybe she needs a place to drop off her kids when she needs to go to school or needs to go to work. You think about the person and then make the product according to this person that you have created. You have created based on statistics. About the numbers show that this is what the person would like, and there are components and analysis that has been done and put into profiling and delivering an end user. So the end user is the one who needs your product. So we create what He created. God created the livestock. And the livestock here are things and elements that are for a certain purpose of consumption mostly. And we'll see that. So God created the livestock and the creeping things and the base, and He made the best of the earth according to their kinds. Sorry about that. He made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps underground according to its kind. And so that it was good, but they were created. Notice that the creation was not an end in itself. There were purposes to these people. There were purposes to the creatures, who's your product, who's your persona, the things that you've created, your databases, your statistics, and your software. There's a purpose to that. There's a purpose to this traction that you've created. Their purpose is greater than just creating a business case and a person who can buy your business case. Okay, so you're going to see that later God said, and this is the highlight, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. So this man is a person who is going to buy your products. This man is you and me, who is created in the image of God. He said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. The 2 things you need to note here, that a human being, we've just come from talking about your end user, and that is a human being. But when you create a product for a human, you need to remember 2 things, that the man is made in the image of God and in the likeness of God. Every human being is made in the image, which means they have the same software as God. They look like Him. in the spirit, in terms of like they have a personality, they have feelings, they have aspirations, they have goals, they have need, they need to love, and they need love themselves, and they do give love in every way. The God is a human being. A human being is loving, is giving, is creative. They need to work, they need to give, they need to create, and there are many other attributes. They need to many other attributes. Then he's made in the likeness of God. When you look at a human being, you need to understand that there is God in them. That's God you're looking at. That is a child of God. So you don't mishandle that they may not look like God physically, but they have the same functions. God feels, God has emotions, God feels, He smells, He hears, He moves, God talks, God has a heart. He's intellectual, He's an intellect. Now, that's a human being, so you don't treat humans as a machine that you press a button and they buy your stuff. Now, they have to be treated as human beings that can reason and that feel. So when a product is returned to you and the client wants their money back, you got to remember these are human beings. They are not robots. They need to feel that you're concerned about what they bought and didn't meet their expectations. And you have to fulfill your promise, because human beings get disappointed just like you would. And they expect better from you, just like you would expect better from any place where you'd put your money to. Then this is the thing, these are the commands, and it says, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And this is the point of making the creatures. Remember I said earlier, they're not an end in themselves. The creating of your products, your pipeline, your numbers on the screen, of numbers of sales, all of that is all towards one mission: dominion. Let them have dominion over. In other words, the human mind controls everything else that they've created, including the product. You can search your service, you can switch you can switch your product, you can recreate it, you can decide what you want to do with your customer base. It's part of your asset. You can decide what you want to do with everything that you have created, including your mass data or your databases. You can actually mine your data for even better insights of who these people are. You can dominate the market from the knowledge you get, and you can dominate the world. Basically, people right now are conquering space. There's even plans to have communities in space, living there, in residential areas, working there, people working and living in space, right? So the thing is, you can mine and recreate. Remember, we said fruitfulness and vegetation was according to what people wanted to see. At the end, if you always need to know what you want to achieve beyond people buying from you, what do you want to give them? Don't give them happy. Do you want to give them happiness? Is that it? Is that what you're selling? Are you selling comfort? What are you dominating? Convenience, perhaps? Uber, and now Uber Eats is actually a market leader. One of the biggest market leaders in convenience is Uber and Airbnb, top of mind. There could be others. Convenience is what they sell. They've conquered the convenience industry, and they've dominated the convenience sector. They call the shots with services in the convenience area. Okay, so the other part is the part of dominion. Is when I think of this is what comes to mind. In other words, when I think of food, I think Uber Eats. And this is the feeling it gives me. It gives me a feeling of comfort, of ease, of trust, because it makes me a better person. Because it makes me a better person, I gotta be as trustworthy, because I am receiving trust. It makes the world a better place. Domination is not cruelty. Domination or dominion is that you get to decide how people live their lives. You have control over the quality of lives of the people that you're selling to. And the fact that you have control already means that you go over and above. You do over and above to ensure that it's a good life that it's a good life and it's not a destruction of the environment or of trees or property, God's property. It is not destruction of nature. It is offering the best out of what you have. It is going back to reinvent and recycle, to reinvent, see what you can do with what you have to the utmost highest goal of the existence of that thing for the benefit of humanity, because everything serves humanity, for the benefit of the world. So God created man in his own image, and he gave them dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, meaning that we reflect the abilities of God. Everything that we've talked about so far is a reflection of your abilities. Through what God did, you can do too. You can create, you can sort, you can organize, you can give indicators and dashboards. You can make something better out of what you already have within your business. You can honor the highest levels of the human spirit from dominion. Through your attribute of dominion, you can enhance the highest level of the human spirit. You can actually bring it out. Bring out the highest level of a human being, which is a human spirit. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living creature. So we come back to this command to be fruitful and multiply. What each recognizes, each person needs to recognize, is that we have innate potency, where we have potential and ability that God has given each one of us, which must be exercised, and that also applies to your business. It has capabilities that need to be exploited and must be exploited because it's part of your fruitfulness, and your multiplication is part of it. Your fruitfulness, multiplication is part of it. For sometimes you can ignore certain strengths that you have. I'll give you an example. When they make sugar out of sugarcane, there's a byproduct called jaggery, and sometimes or sometimes they call it, I think it's jaggery. It actually, a lot of companies could sell it or throw it, but sometimes they could actually make, okay, the other name is molasses. Sorry, I'd forgotten that. They can actually sell it, or maybe make some product that is purely made out of molasses or whatever, right? So it looks through if you look through your organization, or what your processes are and what your services are, what else can you do? What is it that is dormant? What is it that is on neutral? And it's not being exploited because you have not tapped into it or thought about it. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant. This is man. He was given every plant. And this is what I was driving at earlier. I said that the seeds, the plants were not just to be plants all by themselves. They had a function. So when you plant, you need to have a function. You need to have a purpose for the plants. Remember, we said when we want a bottom line, we want profit, we want to plant what we will reap. So you project, and you know what you will plant. If you invest $50,000, you're going to have 50 million in 10 years or 5 years or whatever. So if what we are aiming at is 50 million, we know that it's going to take us an investment of $50,000. Then you go back and you invest 50,000, isn't it? And God did this. What he did was to show us that it does not end with the plant. Even if the plant grows and the plant has seed, you have to have a purpose for the produce from the plant or the fruit. It can be eaten, right? So it can be for food, but you can also make new products. In other words, your profit can be for survival, but it can also be to diversify and multiply. That means going into new markets, going to new products, being creative, doing a lot of R&D, research and development. Find other areas where you can make people's lives better. It could even be into some sort of social cause, or something like community development or social enterprise. I've given you every plant. God said, every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. So you shall have them for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. So God is really concerned about providing for the sustenance. And the sustenance and what in business we call is what we call in business going concern, because your business is not supposed to survive 1 year or operate for 1 year and die. You gotta make sure that your business is in it for a while. And this could mean reinventing. It could mean new markets. It could mean discovering areas you hadn't thought of before. It just means be fruitful and multiply. And so he gave to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life. They were given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So by way of epilogue, one of the things you have to notice is that God created man to dominate the creatures that were beneath him and not to dominate fellow man. And one of the big mistakes that we make is to try to dominate a fellow human being. That's not right. What you should be doing is for dominion to exist in its true form. It is those things that are created before man was created, and those things that are in his control because they were made for him anyway. But a human being has a right standing, or has the same standing as any other human being, as long as they are not God. They are all at the same level. You do not dominate another human being or have dominion over them. So another crisis that you're going to find in your business is trying to dominate people, trying to have dominion over your employees and over your customers. That's not right. What you do have the dominion over is the things that you have created. The things that you have created, like I said, through your analysis, through your research, the development, the intellectual property, your state-of-the-art machinery. You have the means to dominate everything and control the products that you can influence. But you can influence and lead the other human. You can completely influence and lead them. That is your customers, your employees, but dominion is not on them. It is not on the fellow human being. The other thing to note is that God created, it says in verse 24, things according to their kind, the beast of the earth and creeping things and livestock according to their kinds, means that there is a huge diversity of things and products that can be created, that we also as human beings can create. Really no limit of services as well as products, and they're all different categories and different kinds in the categories. So you can have a category for let's say crippled people, or people that need an artificial arm, and then you have a category within the artificial arm business of just working on the joints alone, and then you can have just the making or the plastering on of the parts like the finger without the machinery of the metals, just the molding of the arm itself without the joints part. And even that has subcategories, like the color of the painting of that artificial arm. It could go on and on and on. If it's computerized, there could be what it's attached to in terms of controlling it or movement. So within a category, you do have even subcategories of industries and markets, and that would be informed by your own analysis of what needs are there in the market. But to be honest with you, when it comes to products and supply chains and what you can supply, what you can offer in the market, there is no limit. So there is no need to even encroach in other businesses unless you have a clean cutting edge over them. There are all sorts of things available for you to exploit out there, and even for you to create. So it says that God made the beast of the air according to their kinds in verse 25, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. Literally, in one verse, according to its kind is mentioned thrice, which is very significant. It shows we have the ability to have variety and diversity, and there's a place of variety. There's a place for dynamism. And you know the world is dynamic already, so there is no end to this diversity of services and of goods. And we can go into and dig into all of that. So I hope that this is useful. See you in the next episode. Disappear. Well, we are moving on now to chapter 2 of Genesis. From verse 1, it says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work, and so God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day." So God rested on the seventh day, right? From all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. So it is interesting to note that God himself, the maker of heaven and earth, as we have seen, rested. Now, if God rested or needed rest, and if he could look back at his work and bless the seventh day because he has rested from his work, how much more we who are of a finite ability, a finite lifespan, and so limited in our energy. Note, he didn't say he was tired. It doesn't say that God was tired. It just says that. And it's important to notice we don't rest because we're tired. It's just that he finished the work and it was done. Like it was finished. And he rested from it, from the work. He rested from the work. In fact, if we look at other translations, which we could, the Amplified Version, for instance, says that he ceased on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. In other words, he completed it or retired from it. So we too must complete. The principle here is to have a full stop, to have an end. Mark when something is done, even if it's a phase or a segment of it. There has to be a point of a full stop, not just a comma. But when does this end? That's the question. When does the project end? It's very clear that God's work was phased in days. It had times and timelines for certain tasks. He had a schedule. In the schedule, there's what he did on the first day, and it was so significant. We talked about this, and what he did in the second day, and on the third, and the fourth, fifth, and on the sixth day, everything was completed. By the sixth day, there was a deadline, or at least there was a marker as to when everything would be finished in terms of what finishing would look like. And then on the seventh day, he even blessed that day and sanctified it as his own, and that is set apart as holy from other days. Because in it he rested from all his work which he had created and done. That is the Amplified Version. We need to take the seventh day seriously as a day of rest. Now, some say it's Saturday, some Sunday, whatever day it is. This is a day that is dedicated to God, because he himself dedicated it to himself. He sanctified it as his own, that is set apart as holy from other days, And this is important, or even as a business, you learn to take a Sabbath day as a holy day, not just a day where you don't work, but as a holy day dedicated and sanctified to God in honor of Him. God Himself instituted this day. It is not man who did this, it is God, and He completed His work. So you need also to complete your work. So whatever you can do at a particular time needs to be done. Whatever you can do, you do. Procrastination and postponing when you're not supposed to, when you have no good excuse or reason to, is not a good trait, because then it drags something that would have been completed or marked as completed, and it stops you from moving on to the next thing. There has to be something to show for the work. It says in verse 1 that the heavens and the earth were completed. So even as we end the week or the 6 days, we can see what God had created and what He had done, or what He had been doing, what was His work. There's got to be something to show what has been achieved, what has been marked as completed, what has been completed, what are these things that you've been doing. And in verse 1, it shows a summary result of what, not just a result, but it shows a marker of the things that have been accomplished. Number 1, it says in summary that the heavens and the earth were completed and all their hosts. That is the inhabitants. That's it. That's what happened in the 6 days. That's the work. And by the 7th day, God completed His work, which He had done, and He rested. This is the second verse. And He ceased on the 7th day from all the work which He had done. Now you may argue that we will only rest when we finish work, or sometimes even the notion of this 7 days here is arguable. Some scholars say that it was not strictly 7 days as we know them, but I'm not going to get into that. What is significant to me is that there was a ceasing from work, from completed work, and there was a ceasing from work because it was complete. All work He had done, He ceased from all work He had done. From all work He had done. In other words, it was accomplished to the full. So all is significant because it means that everything was in its place. So the number 1 principle is let there be a clear understanding of what needs to be accomplished, and then let there be a time frame for it to be accomplished. And then number 3, once it is accomplished, let it be recognized somewhere, put down on paper, displayed, recorded as complete, and then let there be a rest. Number 4, from the work. We're not revisiting, we're not reviewing. Let us rest from the work. And the thing, what God did is that He even blessed that day, which is now on Him. It's not for us, but for Him. He blessed the day itself, but it's Him who blessed it, the 7th day. And what we can do is take time out and bless the work that we have done. In other words, acknowledge that it is finished, and it is finished and done well. Okay, and then He said it has been accomplished and done well. So we will continue with this. Bye for now. See you in the next audio.